Preface, or preface. Everything in this book is true and came from God. Defo. It also focuses primarily on pansexual African apes with varying degrees of melanin and diverse metaphysical beliefs. Sorry about that. It also mainly focuses on those pansexual African apes with varying degrees of melanin and diverse metaphysical beliefs that reside on an island off the coast of Western Europe. Sorry about that, too. It may help you to understand this story better if you imagine a bonobo with an iPod. Unless you already assume this because you are yourself a bonobo with an iPod, in which case, well done. Prologue. In the beginning, a thing happened. Can't we at least agree on that? Something most likely happened, then caused other things to happen, and then this became something of a trend. Stuff happened, and then some more stuff. Possibly involving subatomic particles, and then some hydrogen atoms. Rarely do you meet someone who claims to have been there. If you ask your grandparents if they were there, they are likely to deny it. People tend to trust that. Someone who does claim to have been there is almost certainly lying. There is most definitely a widely held belief that there was a beginning, despite a patent lack of any reliable witnesses. In the beginning, there was no good or evil, probably. Some say evil came about because of a snake, a woman, and a fruit. Others are skeptical, and yet again, it is rare to meet someone who claims to have been there. Some blame the snakes, others blame the women. Fruit seems to thus far have pretty much gotten away with it. It is possible Fruit feels rather smug about this, or on the other hand, maybe Fruit feels guilty and would like to confess. Although again, these claims are rarely made. If you ever meet someone who claims to know what Fruit is thinking, do not invite them into your home. Ranting a fruit gets you nowhere. Ranting at a fruit gets you nowhere. Seriously, who blames fruit? Get over it. We were all young once. There would one day come to be a great deal of trouble and evil acts in the world, and the authorities almost never question fruit. Some say the fruit was metaphorical, and if you ever do want to blame fruit, ask it if it is a metaphorical fruit first. Fruit rarely claims to be metaphorical. Few do. If you wish to eat the fruit as punishment for the fruit's evil deeds, it may be worth reflecting that, if you are fruit, being eaten is not a very good punishment. In any case, metaphorical fruit is among the most difficult to eat and has little flavor. If you find metaphorical fruit annoys you, it might be an idea just to ignore it and hope it goes away. In the end, there will be an ending. Possibly. Part 1. Sometimes a journey on London's underground can be the quintessence of atheistic despair. It had never quite struck Delia so strongly before. Sure, she had, like many people, called it hell before now, but to believe in such a thing as hell supposes order, and that somebody somewhere is actually running these things. She'd also theorized that most mental breakdowns from stress did not actually occur at the workplace, but rather the journeys to and from, supposing one ever gets to or from anywhere. Often people take their own lives on the London Underground. But did they come down here to achieve this, or were they just typical commuters or tourists who had simply reached the conclusion that suicide was the quickest end to their journey? Except a lot of them would probably give up waiting for the arrival of the scheduled train, and with nothing to jump under, just go home. This has surely happened. This has surely happened? And were all suicide bombers really fundamentalist terrorists, or did some of them simply decide to release their locomotive frustrations in an excessive manner? Although, she mused, this last scenario would require people to carry bombs on the off chance one would be useful, and frustration to the point of madness can't really be planned in advance. It would be like always carrying an umbrella, which of course only ever means it never rains until the one day you forget it. But it was far worse than all that. People like to live their lives, content in the knowledge that underground has managers, that somebody actually runs Hammersmith and City Line. People always like to imagine things are really run by minds with plans and systems. It is surely our biggest reason for needing religion, but we need signs, miracles even, like a train moving, and these are few and far between. Atheism is the icy cold realization that no one runs Hammersmith and City Line, and success and failures in your journey are not governed, they just happen. To suppose the underground has managers is like supposing that fire alarms actually detect smoke, rather than that the activation of a fire alarm's random screeching had once coincided with a fire, creating a widely believed urban myth. Similar to the faith required to hear a car alarm and sincerely believe that the car in question is in danger of being stolen. Is there even a little man behind a curtain to create the illusion of management? Or if there really is management, could they not just once send one of them down to journey among the people? Perhaps the visit could end with a ritualistic sacrifice. Not a lot to ask, really. There are probably London Underground deists who simply believe there had indeed once been a creator to set things in motion, but that such a being would have to have such an alien mentality, no one could even interpret its will or communicate with such an entity. Supposing it had ever existed, was the evidence it even cared? Delia shook herself free from these thoughts, but immediately regretted not writing them down. You cannot settle your mind on your first day at uni. It's just one of those times in your life where nothing seems real. Even the very carriages and stations were somehow, although familiar, still unfamiliar at the same time. Like watching a modern remake of your favorite childhood film where the gist of it is there, but you know they've gone and got it wrong. She looked up at Abby, who was quietly reading a book. Not even a textbook, thought Delia. Just one of those trashy novels he likes, the kind that think themselves more highbrow than they really are. Why didn't he seem nervous? He was always very sensitive, and confided in her that he had trouble with his nerves, but boys hid their feelings better, she surmised. And he always read on trains. It was the only time they hardly spoke to one another. Delia knew Abby better than anyone, but what even she did not know was that the reason he always read books on the underground was to do with the darkness behind the carriage windows when the train moved through the tunnels. Abby did not want to catch a glimpse of his own reflection.